There are wounds the body never shows, no scars, no bruises, but they shape every relationship you enter, every fear you carry, and every voice in your head that tells you you're not enough. If you grew up in a home where chaos was the norm, where love felt conditional, where you had to earn safety or silence your needs just to survive, this video is for you. Today, we're going to talk about broken beginnings, what psychology tells us about hard childhood memories, why they stay with us long after we've grown up, and most importantly, what healing actually looks like. Why childhood memories are so powerful. Let's start with a question. Why does a memory from when you were 7 years old still make your chest tight today? The answer lies in how the brain develops. According to developmental psychology, the first 5 to 10 years of life are what scientists call a critical period. During this time, the brain is building its foundational architecture, the neural pathways that will govern how you think, feel, regulate emotions, and relate to other people for the rest of your life. Psychologist John Bowlby, known for his landmark attachment theory, explained that children instinctively form deep emotional bonds with their caregivers. These bonds are not optional. They are survival mechanisms. When a child feels safe, seen, and soothed, they develop what's called a secure attachment. When they don't, when caregivers are absent, unpredictable, or harmful, the child adapts. But that adaptation comes at a cost. Dr. Bruce Perry, a leading childhood trauma researcher, found that trauma experienced before the age of 10 doesn't just leave emotional memories, it changes the physical structure of the brain. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, can become hyperactive, always scanning for danger. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic, empathy, and calm decision-making, can remain underdeveloped. This is why people who grew up in difficult homes often feel like they're always waiting for something to go wrong, because their brain literally learned that the world is unsafe. And here's something important. This is not weakness. This is adaptation. Your brain protected you the only way it knew how. Types of hard childhood experiences. Psychology identifies several categories of difficult childhood experiences, and not all of them look like what most people picture as trauma. The first is overt abuse, physical, emotional, or sexual. These are the experiences most people recognize. They involve direct harm, but what's often underestimated is emotional abuse. Being told you're worthless, being humiliated, being silenced. Research consistently shows that emotional abuse can cause damage as deep, sometimes deeper, than physical harm. The second is neglect, and this one is often invisible. Neglect is the absence of what should have been there. A child whose emotional needs were never acknowledged. A child who had to raise themselves. A child who was fed and clothed but never truly seen. Psychologist Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score, writes that neglect can be just as traumatizing as abuse, because the child's developing brain needed warmth, consistency, and attunement to grow properly. The third category is what researchers call adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, a landmark study from the CDC and Kaiser Permanente. This research followed over 17,000 adults and found that exposure to experiences like parental divorce, domestic violence, substance abuse in the home, poverty, or having an incarcerated parent significantly increased the risk of depression, anxiety, chronic illness, addiction, and relationship problems in adulthood. The fourth, and perhaps least talked about, is ambient trauma. This is the cumulative stress of growing up in an environment of constant uncertainty. Maybe nobody hit you, maybe nobody called you names, but you never knew what mood the house would be in when you came home. You learned to read the room before you could read a book. You became an expert at making yourself small. How childhood wounds show up in adult life. Adult impact. One of the most painful parts of carrying a hard childhood is that you think you've left it behind. And then something small happens, and suddenly you're 6 years old again. Psychology calls this a trauma trigger, but it's more than just a word. It's the body's memory. Here are some of the most common ways unresolved childhood wounds show up in adult life. Number 1, people-pleasing and difficulty with boundaries. If you grew up in a home where expressing needs was dangerous, where speaking up meant punishment or abandonment, you likely learned to prioritize other people's comfort at the expense of your own. Psychologist Pete Walker, who wrote extensively on complex PTSD, calls this the fawn response. You learn to keep the peace, to stay safe. Number 2, fear of abandonment in relationships. Adults who experienced inconsistent caregiving often develop what's called an anxious attachment style. They tend to need frequent reassurance. They fear being left. They may stay in relationships that are not healthy because the idea of being alone feels more terrifying than the pain of staying. Number 3, difficulty trusting, including yourself. When the people who were supposed to protect you were the source of harm, trust becomes a complicated terrain. You may struggle to believe that good things will last, or that your own perception of situations is accurate. Number 4, chronic shame and a distorted inner critic. Many adults who experienced emotional neglect or abuse carry a relentless internal voice, one that says they are fundamentally flawed, not enough, or undeserving of love. Researcher Brené Brown defines shame as the intensely painful feeling that we are unworthy of love and belonging. Childhood experiences of shame don't disappear with age. They go underground and run quietly in the background of every decision. Number 5, the body keeps score. You may experience unexplained anxiety, digestive issues, chronic fatigue, or tension in the body. Trauma is not only stored in the mind. Research in somatic psychology shows it's held in the nervous system and the body itself. The science of healing. Healing. Here is the truth that took psychology decades to fully understand, and that still changes lives when people hear it. The brain can heal, not just cope, not just manage. Heal. This is the principle of neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to form new connections throughout life. What was wired in childhood under conditions of fear and chaos can be rewired under conditions of safety and care. It takes time. It takes intention, but it is real. So what does healing actually look like? The first pathway is trauma-informed therapy. Approaches like EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, have shown strong clinical results in helping people process traumatic memories. In EMDR, the brain is guided to reprocess distressing memories so they lose their emotional charge. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, helps people identify and challenge the distorted beliefs that often form in childhood. Internal family systems, or IFS, helps people work with the different parts of themselves that developed as survival strategies. The second pathway is understanding your attachment style and actively working to earn what psychologists call a secure base. Through a good therapist, through carefully chosen relationships, or through intentional self-parenting practices. The third pathway is somatic work, learning to work with the body. Techniques like mindfulness, breathwork, yoga, and body-based therapies help discharge the stored stress from the nervous system. Because the mind cannot fully heal what the body is still holding. The fourth pathway is narrative reprocessing, telling your story, naming what happened, and separating your identity from your wound. You are not your childhood. You are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to do with it. And perhaps the most important step of all, giving yourself permission to grieve, to acknowledge that something real was lost, that you deserved better, that none of it was your fault. Grief is not weakness. Grief is the door through which healing walks in. Closing and call to action. If you've made it this far, I want you to know something. The fact that you're here, watching this, engaging with these ideas, that is not nothing. That is actually the beginning of something. That curiosity, that courage to look at hard things, that is the first movement toward healing. You didn't choose your beginning, but you have more agency over your next chapter than any wound was able to take from you. Psychology doesn't just tell us how we break, it tells us how we rebuild. And the rebuilding, messy, non-linear, imperfect as it is one of the most profound things a human being can do. If this video resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need it. Leave a comment below. Your story matters, and you are not alone. Subscribe for more content rooted in psychology, healing, and the real work of becoming. And remember, broken beginnings don't have to mean broken endings. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.